It's time for Windows Weekly. We're here at the NAB Show in Las Vegas, but guess who's across town? Paul Thurrott for Microsoft's Mix Conference. The latest on Mix, Windows 8, and more next on Windows Weekly.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for Windows Weekly is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com. This is Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott, episode 204, recorded April 13th, 2011. I'm in a cab. Windows Weekly is brought to you by Go to Assist Express. Giving tech support in person is expensive and time-consuming. Save time and money and look like a hero to clients or colleagues with Go to Assist Express. For a free 30-day trial, visit gotoassist.com/windows. And by SquareSpace.com, the fast and easy way to publish a high-quality website or blog. For a free 14-day trial, go to squarespace.com/windows. And by Hover.com. Hover is domain name registration and management that's simple. For Hover's transfer concierge service, free for our audience, go to windows.hover.com. It's time for Windows Weekly. Everything you'd ever want to know about Microsoft. And wait a minute, where am I? I'm in some strange space.
I was going to say.
What's going on?
What is going on, Leo? Because I just walked in the door, and apparently there's a trade show here.
There's a trade show. I'm in the Sky booth.
Yeah.
Here at the beautiful National Association of Broadcasters show in Las Vegas, Nevada. It is. You after the show? You got to wander around.
I'm not kidding. Even walking in the door, I didn't see this because I was shuttled.
Yeah, we pushed you right in here. We said you have no time. You get on the air. But first of all, great to do a show with Paul Thurrott in the flesh, so to speak. Yes. You're wasting away.
Not really, but I have a ways to go. But thank you.
Paul is the host of Windows Weekly. He is, of course, the man in charge of the SuperSite for Windows, winsupersite.com, editor-in-chief at that fabulous site. He's also news editor for Windows IT Pro, and he's slapping Burke away as we speak. I love that.
There's a gremlin under the table.
That's great, because Burke's hand has been reaching up throughout the entire week, and nobody has yet slapped him.
Does he work here? Or
No, he just likes to. He has a fetish.
Okay.
Paul is also news editor for Windows IT Pro, Penton Media analyst, and author of many great books. I didn't bring the Delphi 6 Super
it
Bible.
probably would have exceeded your carry-on allotment.
I'd have to have a bag just for it.
Yeah.
But his latest book, of course, Windows Phone Secrets. He's the Windows Phone guru, and you're not here for the National Association of Broadcasters.
No, this is a silly waste of time, from what I can tell.
So, why would you ever want a transmitter?
If you don't mind,
yes.
Would you? What is this? What happened here?
Train wreck. No, actually, this is like CES, but for professional broadcasters. So it's cameras, it's transmitters, it's audio processors, it's microphones, it's lights. Anybody who is in broadcasting. What's interesting is we're here as their official streaming partner because they've recognized. Look at that.
I need a person under the desk.
Look at a hand. A hand just handed me your book.
Wow.
Who had this with him? This must be Alex. Alex loves you.
What a guy.
Alex loves you. Alex Gumpel is our intern, and he brought this like for light reading. Yeah, you want to autograph that? He's going to autograph it for you, Alex. So this is fun for me because I'm a broadcaster, as you know, Paul, going way back. I started in 1976 on radio. And I realized I was walking over here, and the BEA has a pavilion that is kind of a job fair for college kids.
Oh.
And I was watching these fresh-faced, good-looking young college kids who want careers in broadcasting going in, and it actually moved me to tears. This has been my business for 36 years, and it's a wonderful privilege to be a broadcaster. You get a chance to do interesting things, meet interesting people, and to serve the community. And I was looking at these kids thinking this is the beginning of a very long journey for them. It's a difficult thing, of course, because everybody wants to do it. But
right. Think of the opportunities that are available today.
So different.
To these people that...
So different.
It's just not available.
Yeah. So it's an exciting time. I'm going to... my daughter, Abby, is... freshman in college, and she gets out of school right before Blog World Podcast Expo. So we're going to go to Podcast Expo together because she's very interested in being a journalist and in media. And she said, I really want to go to Podcast Expo. It's in New York. You should come. You're a podcaster,
When is this?
It's May 24th, 5th, and 6th, I think.
I could actually make
Come on
that.
out.
I might do it.
You'd be fun. I'll get you in. I have friends. So I'm reading notes. Obviously, these are old notes. That says Paul is in a cab. So
Paul,
unless you're teleporting here,
Paul is in a cab.
you are not here for NAB. You're here for Mix.
Mix.
What is Mix?
Mix is a Microsoft developer show. It started out as a web developer show.
That's what I thought. I thought it was web.
Right, but now it's web and phone.
Oh, interesting. So
Yeah.
this is a mobile show too.
Yes, it is. And they're, actually, this isn't in the show notes. I just want to mention this before I forget. But it was widely thought that Microsoft is going to have a PDC this year, which is the professional developer show.
In fact, last week I asked you when's PDC. You said I haven't heard yet.
Yeah, September, October was what we were thinking. But they announced at this show that there will be a developer show. They didn't call it PDC, happening in September. And there's a lot of things coalescing around that time period.
You're popping a little bit, so I'm going to
Sorry.
back the mic off a little. Pop, 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 pop. Or you know what we could do is you just aim it.
It's going to fall over, though.
Oh yeah, don't
I think
fall it over.
You're going to risk the wrath of the hand from beneath the table.
Hand will come from beneath the table and slap me this time.
So what I've heard on the side is that they're going to call it the Windows Developer Show, and it's going to be phone, tablet, PC, the whole 9 yards. So that's happening in Anaheim, California, in September.
How is that different from what the PDC used to be?
It's not. I think it's just a renaming.
It's just a
But I
name.
think that what they're trying to do is show the focus, right? That
Right.
This is
Windows.
Windows everywhere.
Windows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this will be the launching point, I think, for Windows 8, the beta.
Oh really?
And also for Internet Explorer 10, the public beta that will have all the end-user features. and all
Right.
that. So-
Right. Okay. So Mix is more about mobile, is more about web. Are there new technologies that they're announcing, or is this more kind of banging the drum for Windows Phone 7?
So a little bit of both, I would say. They announced some things around the futures of Windows Phone 7, around the future of Internet Explorer, around Silverlight 2. Did some Silverlight 5 stuff today. So yeah, a little vision, but a little practicality as well. I think in both cases, i.e. Windows Phone, they looked at the last year and said, look, this is what we've accomplished, and now this is what we want to do in the next year.
Right. Right. They declared victory.
Winning.
Winning. You say they confirmed everything you've been saying all along about these updates. What's that mean?
Well, as you may know, Leo,
You've been a little perturbed.
I've had a little controversy this
You've
year.
been gruntled.
With Microsoft around Windows Phone and their inability to communicate what's happening, their inability to deliver updates in a timely manner, and then finally their inability to tell the truth about why these updates have been delayed. And we've gotten
We know why. It's the carriers.
Well, we've gotten into the scuffle. I quoted accurately what Joe Belfiore told us last November, and when he said that carriers did have that capability to block updates, and they insist that this is not the case, but then they explain it without using the word blocking and basically explain that the carriers are blocking it. So
blocking such a harsh word. They're just
it's a semantic thing.
standing in between us.
They are standing in between us. And as the days go by, it gets a little more alarming, especially for people on AT&T, because of course AT&T is the premier Windows Phone partner, and yet those phones are the ones that are getting it last. And now it looks like they're going to miss their latest set of dates, which was for the first half of September, which, as you know, is ending any day now. And then we get into the second half of I'm sorry, did I say September?
Yeah.
April, sorry.
Yeah.
And second half of April is coming up, and where's the AT&T updates? We don't know. So
Right.
what happened today was that before his keynote address at the Mixed Trade Show, Joe Belfiore got up on stage and said, look, I made some mistakes recently in a Channel 9 video. A lot of people called me on it, and I'd like to address some of that stuff around updates. And then he launched into, and I am dying to see the transcript for this because I'm going to pick it apart for the exact way he words this. But what he basically said was that, yes, carriers can prevent us from delivering updates to users. They are doing that. What I have said all along, basically. And I find it just amazing that, we're still involved in this weird little pushing, shoving match. I mean, they've just confirmed exactly everything I've said. I don't understand.
Is it just they're being diplomatic by not using the word block? They just don't want to piss these guys off because it can make life so much worse.
Yeah,
right.
Yes, but
and this is the problem with being in the telephone business, the wireless phone business, is that these guys, it's like dealing with a mob.
Yeah, it's like dealing with Darth Vader. The scene where he says, "Pray I don't alter the deal any further." And it's not just the carriers; it's also the hardware makers. Microsoft, this past few months, discovered something kind of ugly about both these groups of people, which is that on the carrier side, Those guys shipped their devices in a state which was not what they said they were going to be. In other words, there were little configuration changes that Microsoft knew nothing about. And that those configuration changes were what screwed up that first update.
Oh, interesting.
And then in the wireless carrier part, contrary to all of their claims last fall, a bunch of them are in fact blocking these things even today, months later.
Well, did they give a? Well, they can't give a reason why because they don't admit they're blocking it. So
right, they're still testing it, Leo.
They're testing it,
actively testing it.
It's testing
as we speak.
Maybe okay. I'm going to try to put myself in the carrier's mindset. The difficulty is that in other areas, other regions, they have been pushed out.
Oh yeah,
it's the same update, same hardware. So the testing thing doesn't carry a lot of weight, but I understand they want to test it on their network because, unlike a computer, a cell phone kind of needs to be a little bit more robust, a little more mission critical. Yes.
I don't know. The couple of comments that Joe made, and these again are off the top of my head. I don't have the transcript in front of me. That I think are relevant to this conversation are, they discovered that the process of shipping updates on a phone is different from shipping it on PCs, right? And that from the standpoint of the carriers, an update is delivered to customers in the same way that a new phone is. And I have to say I disagree with that. I think that's a diplomatic way of saying it. I think it's a way that excuses why there are so many delays. I think the truth is that we all, as customers of wireless carriers, pay them probably
way too much,
$100 a month.
Way too much.
And we get a certain amount of bandwidth for that, and who cares what we do with that bandwidth? We use it or we don't. And by the way, they'll think nothing of charging us extra if we go over, so what's the difference? I just don't see what the problem is. There's no capability in this update that impacts the wireless network in any meaningful way whatsoever. So
no, that's a good point. It's not like you have to test it to see if it's going to knock phones off the air.
They do have to support it, of course. The phone, the wireless carrier is the company that sells you the device and then handles the support. But I think we discussed this last week. I mean, phone support basically involves someone walking through a flow chart, and when they don't get the expected results, they swap it out and they move on with life. And I don't really think that there's a high support cost involved, especially with this first update, because it's just not a big.
It's cut and paste and better search
and performance. And that's
performance.
Yeah, I know.
Why not push it?
Why are you keeping this from people? It's too bad.
It rankles, especially because it's the Focus, which is, as you said, the premier partner, the premier phone, and that's the one you and I have, which is.
It's the one I would generally recommend to people. Yeah, it is. Well, in my case, it's extremely personal, but yes, yes.
I do remember when Apple said we're going to get in the phone business in 2007. I went, oh,
yeah.
It's just. It's not anything like the consumer electronics or the personal computer business. It is a completely different beast. Yeah. I don't know why. Perhaps because these companies used to be incredibly evil monopolies.
Well, yes, they are still incredibly evil.
Yeah.
But, Apple found out in 2006, before this happened, because they dealt with all of these companies, how bad they are. And it wasn't.
And yet they had huge clout. I mean, they were able to hold AT&T's feet to the fire in ways that Microsoft apparently can't do with its carriers.
And I find this odd because.
Perhaps because they had an exclusive.
At the time, AT&T was singular. It was the smallest wireless carrier in the United States, if I'm not mistaken.
Now it's the biggest.
Right. But
there's the power of the iPhone.
Fair enough. And also, a perfect reason why that example of the iPhone should have been the one that everyone followed going forward. But,
how so? Exclusivity?
With regard to updates.
Updates.
Yeah, in other words, you can look at, as anyone would, you're entering a market with competitors. So you look at the competitors and you say, well, what did they do right and what did they do wrong? And what do you choose to emulate? You should choose to emulate the things they did right. You should either meet or exceed what the competitors are doing, right? I mean, otherwise, why would you be in this market? So in this case, they decided not to exceed what the
That's what we've said all along, and that really is the bottom line. Look, it's not 2007; it's 2011, and you're competing against some pretty.
And I think Microsoft, with some credibility, could go to Verizon and to to Sprint and to T-Mobile a year ago or a year and a half ago, whenever it was they were talking to these companies, and say, look, you see what Apple's doing here. You need to give us this capability. We will perform all the tests that you need us to perform. But
let's do a little role playing.
Yeah.
Okay, you're Microsoft,
right?
And I am Mr. AT&T, or who should I be, Mr.
Well,
Sprint?
Verizon, for example.
I'll be Joe Verizon.
Yeah.
Okay, come to me and say that. Just say that.
Verizon.
Yes.
We have the iPhone as a model.
What is it, Paul?
Yeah.
you come to me. Yeah.
Let's do it the right way.
And what way would that be, Paul?
The iPhone way.
Paul, May I remind you, you are not Apple.
Not yet.
The
But
day-
see, our
the
goal
day
is
will
to create
come.
2 or 3
The
apples.
day will come, Paul, when you are as big as Apple and you can command my respect. But until that day comes, you will do it my way, or you can go talk to Sprint.
Leo, this is a very insightful example because I have a feeling that is exactly how the
I
conversation
think
went.
it did, except for the accent.
I don't know.
maybe even
I
the
don't know.
accent. Yeah, I mean I think that's the sad thing is that Microsoft didn't, with all the clout Microsoft has in the PC business, it doesn't have
Oh,
that kind of clout in the wireless business.
actually, it's even worse than that. Not only do they not have the clout, I think there is a long-standing fear, although it's now overblown and maybe passé, that Microsoft, as the dominant fixture of a certain industry, is going to come into these other industries and dominate them, and they don't want that.
Yeah.
And it's the reason why Microsoft never made any serious inroads into the cable TV business, and the same reason in the wireless, mobile phone business.
Right.
And these guys are just scared that, here's a company that's so thoroughly dominated in this other industry. We don't want to become Hewlett-Packard or Dell or, the equivalent, right, for our market, because we're just the thing through which they sell their phones and they
Right.
make all their money. I think that's what they're worried about.
Right.
Although
Well, I understand that too.
they allowed it to happen with Apple, though. So
Well, yeah, but and maybe that was the lesson, the object lesson that they don't want to repeat.
maybe,
I
sure.
think that you see the same thing happen with the music
except
industry.
for
They
when,
let Apple come in the door, and then Apple became so powerful, the music
Right.
industry wishes they could break them.
There's a big difference, though, because we will always need the wireless operators, right? We put up with their bizarre pricing structures and expensive costs because we need this stuff so
For the
desperately.
life of me, I do not understand why we put up with it.
And even in the case of the iPhone, this is a place where they've made compromises because of the wireless carriers, right? They started off with Edge when we were already on 3G. They're still on 3G as we're moving to 4G and so forth. It's interesting that they don't look at Apple and see the right things, which are, by the way, consumers' bizarre ability and desire to upgrade on a nearly constant basis every year, even though they're out of contract, and just
It
pay
is
those
bizarre.
fees. And that's money that goes
Big
in part
money.
to the wireless carriers.
You
why
bet.
why would they not want to be part of that? You give them a good experience and they keep coming back for more. That is the ultimate customer. That's what Apple created. That's what Microsoft should want to create with Windows Phone, and it's what the wireless carrier should want as well. This is a win-win.
I think we'll never get inside the mind of
Yeah,
Verizon.
I don't understand it.
understand it either. I think you're absolutely right. And you would think that they would like to have big, reliable, responsible companies like Microsoft
Yeah.
in there to balance Apple's
Absolutely,
dominance.
absolutely. Yeah, because Microsoft and RIM and HP someday with the Palm OS or the Web OS, Android, of course, and iPhone. These are all companies and platforms that these mobile operators can play off of each other as well, and thereby gaining further leverage too, right? Because Verizon could go to say Android and say, look, we're not going to carry you now because we have iPhone, and
Right.
unless you give us a better deal, or something. I mean,
Right.
it's something. It seems like you would want more of this, more viable platforms.
It baffles me. I don't
Yeah.
understand. I can't claim to understand the wireless companies and why they are the way they are. Because, and I also don't understand why we, as consumers, and Congress and the FCC allows them to do things like these early termination fees that are just piracy. It's just piracy.
They resist every change imaginable. I always think of the car makers and how they resisted airbags and seatbelts for as long as they could. Because
But
of
they
the
got
cost.
forced into it. But
They got forced
nobody
into it.
seems to have the guts to stand
And,
up to Verizon and AT&T and say, "Look,
Yeah.
you can't have a 15-second
Or
message at
you
the end of
can't-
every message saying press 1 to
Yes.
leave a message. Press 2."
Or
It's skimming.
You want the simplest thing possible. I want my phone number to go with me. Oh no.
Can't be
No, we
doing
can't
that.
do
Well, they have that.
No,
Number
now they do, but
portability.
they were
Finally.
forced. They were
Took
forced
a
into
long
that as
time.
well. Same thing.
Yeah. The cost of an SMS message. I mean,
Right.
thousands of dollars a megabyte.
How is that a separate plan?
What's the deal?
It's crazy.
And yet, I know there have been, rumblings in Congress about, well, we got to do something about this. They're not going to.
No.
It must be that the Verizon gives them so much money, contributes so much to these congressional races
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
they
yeah.
just are invulnerable. And consumers just, I guess because we don't have a choice, it's a parent competition, but it's not real competition.
Sure.
You've got AT&T, Verizon, and Sprint. We've lost T-Mobile now, but you've got 3 companies. There should be a competitive, something, but there isn't. They're all basically the same. It's
Yeah.
all basically $2,400 for the life of this phone, plus whatever $200 to buy it.
Absolutely,
That's
yeah.
ridiculous. This phone costs more than any PC made today. I'd get an Alienware top of the line.
Yeah. It's worse than that too, because what's going to happen is I assume that's an iPhone 4. I can barely tell with all
Yeah, they're all the same now.
the iPhone 5 is going to come out, and you'll be on early
Oh, you bet.
release, and you'll pay the fee because you need to get that new phone.
Oh,
and,
you
and,
bet.
And there's thousands and thousands.
Somebody's quoting a Walt Mossberg piece from 2005 where Walt Mossberg rants against the control of the cell phone companies. He says, "I call them the new Soviet ministries." That's 6 years ago,
Sure.
and it hasn't changed.
No, it hasn't changed a bit.
Oh, let's take a break. I'm just chuffed or something. That's my new word.
Chuffed?
Chuffed means like
Chuffed.com?
happy.
Oh.
But it's a word that the chat room's been using to describe my temper. They say I'm chuffy.
Okay.
Let's take a chuffy break, and we'll be back more with Paul Thurrott, back from Mix. I want to hear a little bit about Mix and Mango. I love Mango. But before we do that, I would like to talk a little bit about our friends at Citrix, the great makers of GoToAssist Express. If you're in the business of supporting friends or family or colleagues, tech support, as you know, is time-consuming. It's painful for you. You got to be very patient, and especially if you're trying to do it over the phone. You don't want to go to their home or office. There's an easier way. Better than phone, better than travel. It's called GoToAssist Express. You fix the problem without being there in person, without walking somebody through a phone call. You can actually view the other person's computer online, control it, resolve the technical issues, even while your customers are away from their computer. That really boosts your productivity. In fact, GoToExpress users report a 40% increase in productivity, like 2 extra work days a week, just by using GoToAssist Express. Are you in IT or support? You got to try this free for 30 days. GoToAssist.com/Windows. Is that right? I'm going to have to look. I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah, it is. There it is. It says it right there. I should just read the screen. GoToAssist.com/Windows. Here's how it works. You start your session with one click, just like all the services from Citrix. You can send an invitation via email. You can send a link via chat. You can tell them on the phone, go to GoToAssist Express. It's actually GoToAssist.com, and I think it ends up being FastSupport.com. You click a button that says Start a Support Session. You get to FastSupport.com, aptly named. Works on both PCs and Macs. You can support a PC from a Mac or vice versa. You can share your screen so they can see what you're doing. You can do 8 sessions at once, unattended support. You can see what's on the computer, Windows versions, Mac versions, what security software is on there, what programs are running. It's just incredible. Solve more problems more quickly, be more efficient, be a support hero. GoToAssist Express. Visit GoToAssist.com/Windows right now. Try it free for 30 days. I know you'll like it. GoToAssist Express. Mix 11. How many people are at Mix?
I don't know. Thousands.
It feels like it's a large group of people.
It's a smaller group. It's not like this.
Mostly
obviously.
developers.
All developers.
All
yeah.
developers.
Yeah.
A few
I would say a couple thousand, maybe 3,000. I'm not sure.
And is there a seminar track? Are there booths? What does it look like?
Yeah, this is a small trade show floor. Actually, it would fit pretty much up here on this platform. But really, what this is about, though, it's not really that stuff. Obviously, it's the sessions.
It's the sessions,
developer-oriented sessions.
And they're all led by Microsoft.
Most of them are by Microsoft employees. Some are by third parties.
Okay.
But this is an interesting place, I think, for people to go and get information about the future of this stuff.
I think so.
Whether it's web development, HTML5, Silverlight, or the Windows Phone stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's start with Windows Phone. They talked about Mango. What is Mango?
I conveniently didn't list any of the features. Let me go to my website. So Mango is the coming version of Windows Phone 7 that will be delivered in the second half of this year.
What's the current version?
The current version, I think
Papaya?
I would know that. I believe there was no actual...
Is it all tropical fruits?
So all the Windows Phone code names end in O.
Oh.
And I think for the first version, it was just Metro,
Metro.
which is really the UI, but
right.
The design language, whatever. But Nodo, of course.
Nodo, that's the update.
Mango is 7.5,
right.
or the interim update. A pretty major update. And then the Windows 8 version is called Apollo.
Uh-huh.
So those are the code names.
So Mango will be the next version. This will be fairly large update, I presume.
Yeah, this is a big one.
Are we talking a year away, or?
Well, so supposedly in the second half of this year. I mean, based on how things have gone,
right.
Who can say? I think we can anticipate that.
Since Nodo hasn't even arrived, we don't know when Mango will get here.
Well, AT&T will block it until February 2012 or something. But I guess we'll see.
Unbelievable.
So there are 3 aspects to Mango in the sense that there are developer-oriented features, which is what they announced. announced today. And then there are consumer-oriented features, which they haven't really discussed, although, of course, some leak out just because they talk about things. And then there are the productivity or business-oriented features. And I think we can guess around those type of things that they will improve the Exchange ActiveSync support, do on-device encryption, and all that kind of stuff. So, but today, primarily, what they were talking about was the developer-oriented features. Multitasking for third-party apps, background downloading, background audio. So you can run whatever the audio app is and have the music play in the background while you do other things, that $19.99 cell phone feature, things like that. So they're catching up in many ways, which is nice. I think the only issue I have with Mango, aside from the obvious, I suppose, is that it's almost certainly, based on the fact that they said nothing to the contrary today, the only other update that's happening this year, right? In the sense that we have Nodo, and we're going to get a little SSL update, which is just a small thing. And then there's Mango, and it doesn't seem like there's going to be anything in between. And I've spoken before about the need, I feel, for Windows Phone to be updated constantly and regularly and repeatedly.
Right.
And that
especially early on when you're still figuring it out as you go.
Yeah. But, that said, some of the demos they did around Mango are actually pretty exciting and pretty interesting, and I think the people will be pleased with it. It's just an unknown if many of the things that I could point to that are wrong with Windows Phone today will be fixed by this release, because again, they're not really talking about the end user stuff yet. But
so we don't know.
We don't know.
We just don't know.
Yeah.
What kind of developer features?
Well, access to some of the sensors. Raw access to the camera, raw access to the gyroscope.
That's always good.
Yeah, accelerometer type stuff.
Game development companies love that because they can right around that.
Yeah. So to give you an idea of the developer focus of this show and the way they would describe it is, as with the iPhone, you have a developer environment on your computer, and there's an emulator for the phone, and you can run your app in the emulator, just like you can run it on a device. But it was hard to do certain things in the emulator. I should say it's hard today to do certain things in the emulator around such things as the accelerometer, the gyroscope.
Right, because your computer doesn't have one.
You can't spin it around.
Right.
So now they have so in the new version of these tools, which will be coming out next month in a pre-release form, they have an accelerometer in software, in a sense, so you can move it around in a 3D space, and the phone actually spins around.
I think it's true that most laptops do have accelerometers for dropping, in case you drop them, so they can park the hard drive and stuff. So I guess you could do that.
If you have a multi-touch screen, which some Windows PCs do, you can actually interact with the emulator using multi-touch, and that is very neat. But for those instances where you want to see, you have a game and you want to push it forward, say to drive the car or something, whatever it is, doing that in an emulator is not really possible. So that they've added those kinds of things.
That's super important, because what you really don't want to, most developers are developing and using emulation initially, and you want that to be as true to life as possible, because it's a pain, as you're developing for a handset, to move it over to test on the handset. You can't iterate very fast, because you make a change, you have to copy it to the handset. If you can't trust the emulator, you have to copy it to the handset, you have to run it on the handset, then you go back, and it's a real pain. So getting a good emulator is key to getting a developer.
We did a live blog this morning for the keynote, and we being a group of people who do what I do, Ed Bott and Mary Jo Foley.
Oh, great. I wish they were here. You should have invited them.
I don't think I think it would have been a tough haul to get everyone to come here, and of course,
where is it?
It's in the Mandalay Bay, which is of course
it's
the furthest,
way the hell over.
The furthest thing down there.
Nice hotel, but not near here.
It's not close. So it was interesting to me because, of course, maybe I'm perceived as being negative in the Windows Phone space, which bothers me, because I feel like I'm the one really pushing for this thing to be as good as it can be. I'm not just randomly complaining about things, but I think a couple of the other bloggers are trying to make the point today that this stuff really did excite people and see like things are okay. But I guess what I would say to this is simply that when you look at Windows Phone and all of the different things that go into Windows Phone, the one thing that Microsoft has always gotten right, and I've said this before, is the developer stuff. They've courted developers correctly. The developer tools have always been excellent. I would argue that the developer tools for Windows Phone, even today, are superior to anything available for any other mobile platform. And that this is not this is not a new thing. This is not a weird exception. This has always been the case. The Windows Phone developer stuff has always been awesome. And they've got, once Mango arrives, the unfortunate truth of the platform is there's just core features that are not there in Windows Phone today.
Push notifications.
Sockets. So you can't have Skype, for example.
Interesting.
So these things need to occur so that the developers who want to be on board can be on board, and that's what's going to happen. So they showed off Skype today, for example. They showed off Plants vs. Zombies and Angry Birds, which is coming very soon. A lot of stuff that's already available elsewhere. But
that's important. You've got to show that.
Yeah.
You have to have that. It's now the baseline for a smartphone.
Sure. Well, you can't even, for example, if you have Pandora. Now, there's no Pandora app on the phone
There isn't?
yet,
Oh,
but
this is-
why would you want one? Because you'd have to leave the app running to play.
Right.
So as soon as you leave the app, music stops.
Right.
Because that's a limitation of this platform today. It's just the unfortunate truth.
Oh, well, they don't have multitasking?
No, they do have multitasking, but not for third-party apps.
Only for their
And they
own.
don't have background audio, but they will in Mango on both those counts. So
Got it.
Mango is important because I think what it represents is Windows Phone as they envisioned it for the first release, but they knew they had to get to market quickly, so they cut some things out to make the schedule.
Right.
And now what we're finally going to get a year later is maybe what it should have been.
The catch-up.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's basically they're catching up to.
Yeah,
and
and it looks great. I don't want to downplay that. I mean, it
Right.
looks great. I think they've made some nice changes. But again, it's always the same thing with Windows Phone. It's like not quickly enough.
Well, I mean, that's what happens. You get to the market a few years after the market
And,
leaders.
but there's also kind of a blissful ignorance on their part, which bothers me.
They don't understand where they
Joe
stand.
Belfiore stood on stage today and referenced the IDC and Gartner studies that predicted that Windows Phone would be number two in the
I'm sure
market.
they love that.
But what he said about that, and this kills me because I love this guy, and I just can't believe he would say such a thing, is this validates our strategy. Really. Because in both cases, what they said was, it's because of Nokia.
Right.
It has nothing to do with you.
Right.
It's just by virtue of Nokia coming on board, you're going to be number two.
By the way, that happened since we talked last. We had the IDC report.
Yeah.
And we both mocked it.
Well, now Gartner has.
But now Gartner's concurred.
Yeah.
So now do you think it's a little more credible that Windows Mobile, Windows Phone 7 will be
No,
number two by next?
No, I think
what is it? 2015.
2015. I think things are fluid, and I think it is impossible to make this kind of prediction because we don't know.
We have no idea.
At
That's
what
so
rate
long.
Nokia?
3 years.
Well, no, but Nokia's market's going to change. It's going to shrink.
Right.
Well, I shouldn't say it's going to shrink. It may not grow as fast as the rest of the market, but I think they're going to lose customers over this Symbian thing. And Nokia's strategy is to go lowball. Their goal is to reach that next billion number of people out in the third world nations that don't have phones yet and don't have computers and never will. And that's a great strategy for volume, but it's not a great strategy for profits.
Right.
So I guess we'll see, is what I'm saying.
Well, it's also, I guess we talked about this last week, a questionable strategy for a smartphone because you can't make them cheap enough. The data plans are expensive.
Yeah,
And the
they
hardware's
rely on
expensive.
connectivity and data and all.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
we'll see.
talked about
We
that.
will see.
We shall see.
If Windows Phone becomes number two, but it's by making what is essentially a feature phone.
Right. Well, is that really even Windows Phone?
I'm not sure what we're talking about at that point. So we'll see.
Yeah. I see push notifications on this list, but
You do.
for Mango.
Where are you looking?
Not at yours, but at Microsoft's description of what's
Push
new.
notifications. Yeah. Well, they're adding.
Don't they have push notifications?
They do, but they're
Can an
adding,
app say, "Hey, Paul, it's time to harvest your cauliflower"?
It can, but it has to do it itself, and it has to do it through a mechanism through the live tile that you have to go to see that it's been updated.
Okay.
So what's coming in Mango is the ability to do such things as create an alarm from an app. So you get a standard Windows Phone alarm, but from another app, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
that's what you need, though.
they also have this kind of I don't know what to call this. It's like a deep dive shortcut kind of thing. So, for example, you have a favorite flight app. Say American Airlines makes an app.
Right.
And right now you can pin that app to your start page, to your home screen. But what they're adding is the capability to pin parts of apps to your start screen. So, for example...
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, so you could have your flight for a trip and your flight home for a trip, and then those things can
Those can be
individually
tiles.
give you notifications.
Oh, that's sweet.
So on a trip, you might have this custom home
Right.
screen with different little applets. I don't know what you would call those things, but little live tiles that don't represent an actual full app, but
Just a
rather
part of.
a part of an app. Yeah,
I think that's really clever.
I think so. Now, it's unclear whether this is going to be super discoverable and whether people will use it a lot or whatever, but it makes for an interesting demo.
Well, maybe it could be like a tear off. I don't. You're right. How do you show
They have a
that
little.
in an app?
They use a little pin icon,
Okay.
kind of thing. So that's interesting. I mean, they're adding Internet Explorer 9 with the same back end. They're saying the same renderer as is in the desktop browser. HTML5 support, standard support, hardware acceleration, and so forth. Obviously, there are limitations.
Some of this also relies on, and this may not be mistaken,
Mm-hmm.
but relies on Android and iPhone not making great leaps forward. You're
Yeah,
playing
yeah,
catch up. You're catching up.
Right.
It's
It's not a target that's standing still.
It's a moving target.
It's a moving target. Yeah.
On the other hand, it is a much more mature market, and it may be that there aren't as many new things that iPhone and Android can do.
Yes, I think we're going to quickly hit that point that we're already at with the PC
Right.
desktop, where improvements, dramatic improvements, become very hard.
It's very clear on the desktop that
yeah.
OS 10 and Windows 7 are complete parity.
And if that's the case, then maybe their strategy is working.
Yeah, it may take a while. At some point, though, that's true. They will catch up.
Right, without knowing what iPhone 5 looks like and iOS 5, assuming they call it
or
that.
when, even, because it doesn't look like they're going to do it
but
soon.
let's say this year, okay. Without knowing whatever the honeycomb version of Android for smartphones is called, whatever that is, without knowing exactly what that is, it's hard to say where Mango compares. Absolutely, I feel like they're catching up with what's out there now. But, I think it's also fair to say that Windows Phone has certain advantages over these other platforms as well, and those things do continue forward until Google or Apple decides to copy wholesale some of their UI or user experience ideas, which maybe they should, frankly.
I like the tiles. I think that's a nice one.
I like the hubs. I like a lot of the stuff.
Yeah.
I wish there was more integration in the hubs. When you think back to the big promise of the hubs, it was, yes, you could have a million different little photo apps for all of your different services, but wouldn't it be nice if you had a pictures hub where all of this stuff was just integrated together? And that would be nice. But as of today, that's still a theory, right? Because I don't get deep Flickr integration right into the hub. I don't get deep Google Picasa Web integration directly into the hub.
Do developers have the ability to create a hub?
You could create a hub, but why would you, right?
It's really up to Microsoft to create these high level hubs, photos or whatever, and then you write to it, or you make that capability.
Yeah, I think Microsoft included the ones that make the most sense. The most general ones. You can create an app as a hub if you wanted to. Absolutely.
Okay.
But you're not going to create something that's the equivalent of music.
No.
Or
no. Much more likely that you're
right?
a Flickr app, and you make sure you integrated with a photo hub. Can you do that?
Not exactly. So Flickr has an app, which is a decent app, but it's an app like an app on any platform. It's just an app. It's a standalone app. The integration pieces between Flickr and that hub, the Pictures Hub, are very minimal because those APIs don't exist yet or are not
that would be another thing Mango
and hopefully that's something, we'll see.
Yeah. We're going to take a break, come back and talk about IE 10 and Windows 8, both of which were topics of conversation. Silverlight 2 at Mix 11. Paul Thurrott is here talking about Mix 11, which just happens to be across town.
the other show.
The other show. Vegas is so big. There are actually dozens of shows going on right now. It's funny.
There's an IBM show here, the WebSphere show.
Is there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
At the Venetian.
It's amazing. It's also amazing to me that there's still shows at all, frankly, in the internet age.
It's so old school, isn't it?
It's very old school. It's fun. But, if you're selling transmitters or big cameras, you have to have some physical presence because people want to hold these things and see what they look like. And, there's a booth over here where they're tattooing people.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
I need a tattoo. Do you want to go get some kind of
let's go get a tat. That's awesome. If I were going to get a tattoo, I'd probably get SquareSpace.com tattooed on my rump. Because
interesting opening.
There's something you don't hear in ads very often. I love SquareSpace.com. We use it for our TWiT blog, inside.twit.tv. It was so easy to create a blog that fit the TWiT look and feel with the right colors, the logos, and everything. It's literally point and click, drag and drop. You can then incorporate things like Flickr and Twitter and Facebook, any RSS feed, all with simple widgets that you just drag and drop. You stick in there and you can set them and configure them. It couldn't be easier. You don't have to be a web developer to do it. Now, if you are a web developer, Squarespace also allows you to use CSS and JavaScript, and really the sky's the limit. You can do anything you want, add e-commerce. It's just a really slick platform with very high quality serving at the back end too. So you get web hosting plus the best software in the business for managing your content. That's squarespace.com. That's what it is right there. If you go to squarespace.com/windows, you can try it for yourself. I do encourage you to do this. It's so easy to set up a site. You might want to set up a site for a friend, a loved one, a business you really like, and say, hey, you need a website. Look at this. You can you don't use your credit card or anything, so you can just say, here's the password. You take it over. It's really a great way. I would bet a web designer could do this to make spec sites really quickly and do very well. I want you to try it. It's free for the next 14 days. Squarespace.com/Windows. The importer and exporter allows you to get your data in and out, so you're never trapped. From WordPress, Blogger, Movable Type, TypePad. Those are pretty standard APIs. Most sites will support one form or another of those. They've got forums. I would like to try this. We haven't done this. Maybe we should put a forum on our Inside TWiT blog, give you the chance to interact. There's a form builder, so you can create forms to collect information, Flickr photo display, Twitter widget, Google Maps integration, an incredible stats package that lets you really know what's going on, and a search engine optimizer, which makes sure Google finds you and knows everything that's going on your site. These are all features that top-level web designers know you need to include in a site. It's so easy. You don't have to be an expert. You flip some switches, and it's all there automatically as part of the package. Sites as low as $12 a month for your 14-day free trial. Squarespace.com/Windows. Give them a try today. You'll love it. I know you will. You might even get them tattooed on your rump. You never know.
There are a few things certain in life, Leo, but
that's one of them that you're not going to happen.
Not
Not going to happen. So IE9 just came out, and already we're talking IE10.
So
I guess that makes sense.
It makes some sense, right? Microsoft is not a company known for moving quickly, as we discussed. But the IE team in particular discovered something over the past year or so with this release of IE9, which was releasing pre-release versions of the browser on a regular basis and getting lots of feedback. It was kind of awesome.
Yeah.
And it worked really, really
makes
well.
Makes it so much better. They didn't do that in the past?
No, not like that. They set out and they said, look, here's the first platform preview. They released it Mix last year. And they said every 8 weeks going forward, we're going to release something else.
That's
great.
And
then they did it.
That's
and
great.
The feedback they got was incredible. It really helped develop the browser.
Sure.
So, I thought this is interesting. We can see Microsoft changing right before our eyes, and you can see them really opening up to this. And I figured Mix was going to come this year and they would announce something. I wasn't sure if it would be IE10 or if they would just keep calling it IE9, but every 8 weeks or something.
New.
They would release something new.
That's not a bad idea.
They've decided to go with IE10. Clearly, it's going to be the version of IE that ships in Windows 8. The timing is all right there. It's all happening at the same time. It makes a lot of sense. They've stretched out the timeline a little bit, so it'll be every 8 to 12 weeks. They don't want to. I guess they don't want to get pigeonholed down to 8 weeks exactly, because frankly, going from IE9 to IE10, from a web standards perspective or from a background technology perspective, is not really as drastic as what they did last time.
No, they've made the big shift.
Yeah.
They are now standards compliant.
Yes, now they're just literally adding individual CSS features. It's really interesting. I don't have this in my notes, but
now, HTML5 is a moving standard, so I imagine that's the other reason, is that you want to make it as compliant with HTML5 as you can, but as new standards and new parts of it get ratified, that's more to
so
do.
they're handling that in a different way. It's interesting. There are parts of the spec that are reliable in the sense that they're probably not going to change.
Right.
So those are the things that are going to go into these platform previews. They actually have a separate area where they're doing development of these parts of HTML5 that might change a lot.
Interesting.
And you can optionally add them into the browser.
Oh, that's clever.
Yeah.
That's great.
It's a nice way of doing it. So, the IE10 platform preview, the first one, is a lot like the IE9 platform preview from a year ago in the sense that there's no UI whatsoever. It's just a simple window with nothing in it, and then you get to test things against it to see how your HTML does and so forth. So
I wonder if they're developing it as modularly as it sounds. In other words, if it really is a modular development where they plug pieces in like
I hope so.
Lego.
That was always the not the fear, always the hope I had for these guys, is that that's how they would do it. That instead of having to do this monolithic big release, that they could just plug things into it and improve it over time.
I think a browser lends itself to that very well.
Yeah, and it's certainly how Chrome is doing it, and Firefox is trying to do it. We'll see how Firefox does with that, but obviously Chrome is on kind of an insane development cycle, and you want to balance it between the ways of the past and that hyper release schedule that Chrome has. In fact, they made this comparison where they said, there's a difference between cadence and progress. I found this to be an interesting term.
Okay, now that's cadence and progress.
Yeah, because Microsoft uses the word cadence all the time. So, for example, here's an example.
Cadence reminds me of like that thing the Marines do.
Yeah.
Lift, you lift, you
That's
lift.
exactly right. So
you had a good hum on your left, you're right.
So the Windows Server team, I think, was the first big group at Microsoft to start talking like this. They would say, we're on a regular release cadence, where every other release is a major release and every other one is a minor release.
Yeah.
Now, actually, they've given up on that, but that was the term. Cadence was a word. It was like a Microsoft keyword bingo game. You could play. Cadence is one of those words you wanted to
hear
always
it a
have.
lot.
Yeah, but now they're kind of poo-pooing cadence, because cadence is doing things, iterating, releasing new versions, but it's not the same thing as progress. What they're saying is, we want progress, not just to have a new version. And that was a sort of a slight dig at Chrome, which is, Chrome has released 10 versions of their browser, but are these things really, is version 10 of the browser
I don't
really,
even know why they call them versions. I couldn't tell you what's
I know,
new.
it's crazy. Why even bother?
Yeah.
So Microsoft is
might
trying
have
to
some
draw that
internal
distinction.
value, but I don't think it. But remember, there is a difference with Chrome because it updates itself automatically. I don't think users even care or know what version they're using, because they just use the latest version. They're guaranteed to be using.
I really like the way Chrome works in that regard, by the way. But there is a truth to the fact that certain businesses don't ever want that to happen behind their back.
I understand.
And automatically.
Yeah.
And, Microsoft will always have that going for them in the sense that, they are on a very predictable, not cadence anymore, but
right.
progress or whatever. So
Right. Oh, I kind of like that. In a way that it's almost like they're thinking philosophy as much as development.
Well, because there's something artificial to the Google versioning, isn't there? I mean, well, if you were to open up Chrome 8 and browse around the web for a few minutes, and then you open up Chrome 10,
How would you know the
would you
difference?
even notice, aside from the fact maybe the icon changed?
Well, that's why I wonder if it's maybe more an internal, something that they internally understand, but they don't expect users to need or know.
Sure.
Truthfully, you go up to somebody and ask who's using Chrome. Well, first of all, most users probably don't use Chrome, but if you go up to somebody asking what version of Chrome are you using, they don't know. They will know.
I would have to check.
I would have to check. I mean, they barely know what version
I'm on the
of
beta
IE.
channel, so I'm guessing it's 12 something.
They're close to 12, right?
Yeah.
But I know this from the radio show. You ask people what version of Internet Explorer they're using. They don't know. They don't know. Because what I want to find out is, are you using IE6?
Right.
And I say that, and they say, I don't know. And so you always end up having to say, well, okay, have you updated your system ever?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So I'm sure people don't know what Chrome version they're using, except the most hardcore of geeks. So it's an internal numbering scheme.
Yeah. It's also a convenient way to repel critics, right? Because people can say, hey, look, in the last 12 months, Firefox did almost nothing. They finally updated their browser. Microsoft, it took about that year to go from platform preview to release in IE9. And Google apparently released, 6, 7 updates? It's some crazy number of...
But we neither know nor care is what I'm saying.
Sure.
I do care that there's a huge difference in 6, 7, and 8 of Internet Explorer.
Yeah.
We do care about that.
Yeah. Well, because those things occurred over literally a 10-year period,
right.
by the way.
Wow.
Yeah. Google's 6, 7, 8,
well,
9,
10
10
months.
11, 12 has been
10 months.
a year.
Yeah.
At most, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's the distinction they're trying to draw. Don't be fooled by this versioning stuff. These guys are artificially moving it forward, but they're not really making any progress.
Is 10 better than 9? I don't know. I don't even know how 10 differs from 9.
I have no idea.
Yeah. Well, okay, that's a legitimate point.
Yeah.
So they'll save Windows 8 stuff for
yeah, they're not talking about this.
Yeah, that's not here. Anything else at Mix?
Anything else at Mix? No, I think that's the big stuff. It's IE10.
Silverlight.
Silverlight 5, but it's not out. So Silverlight 5, I believe, is available in a new beta version, and there'll be developer tools that will let you take advantage of that stuff. It's funny. I've saved this for the plane ride home. I took Dean Hatchamanovich, whatever his name is.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Dean. Is the guy who runs the IE team. A great guy. He gave the keynote speech for IE. And he started off his speech by saying, people have overwhelmingly voted for native apps over web apps.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Fair enough. But then he launched into a 90-minute keynote that was specifically about HTML5 and standards and how the browser was taking advantage of that. Now, I need to go back and read it to kind of see where he was heading, because one of the things that IE9 does and IE10 will do is it will take a web app like Gmail or Hotmail or whatever and allow it to work in the operating system in Windows 7 like a native app, somewhat like a native app, right? So you can pin it to your taskbar. It has little jump lists. It can send you notifications, right? So if Hotmail gets you get a new email in Hotmail, you can get a little star down there that says you got a new email, even though it's from a website, not from an application.
Right.
So they're kind of blurring the line. That's an interesting capability.
They're not alone. That's what's happening with
right.
web
But
apps, right?
But the work that's occurring in IE9 and now in IE10 is, of course, around the web standards and HTML5 and CSS3 and all that stuff. And what you see is an interesting thing where you get developers applauding for this stuff, where you do a video demo in a browser where it's inside of a box and there's different videos playing, and everyone's, oh my God, look at that. To which and I hate to be that curmudgeon guy, right? But wasn't this interesting in Windows when Windows 95 came out? Are we really going back that far in time that we're impressed that So I guess my argument about this stuff is simply, what I'd like to see from whatever this next platform is, I don't care what it is, HTML5 and Silverlight or whatever, is next generation capabilities that are unique, just unique, period. Right. In other words, it shouldn't be impressive because now it's in a browser. It should just be impressive. They showed a demo of Pac-Man running off of a website from Namco. You can pin the little Pac-Man thing.
Yeah,
It's like
Google's done this too. It's just to say, oh, look all the cool things you could do in HTML5.
which is neat. But again, my point is,
Right.
if this is going to be the platform, then
Right.
it needs to exceed. It's just like competing in the phone space, right? It's not enough to say, look, we can do something on the web that we could do in Windows 5 years ago.
Right.
We need to be able to do something we could never do before, and it shouldn't matter where it runs.
Right.
Just make it work. So I think we're going to get there, in the browser. I think there are things in Chrome and Firefox and in IE that point to this future.
I'm trying to think what the advantage is. I guess you can make simpler computers that just have, that's what Google's doing, Chrome OS.
But who's that an advantage to?
Right.
It's not an advantage to Microsoft. I will tell you that, this laptop is not my normal laptop. I brought it because it's small. I wanted something light. So I reformatted it before I came out, and I put a bunch of things down here in the taskbar that I use very regularly. It turns out, by the way, that most of these, I haven't counted, but only 2 or 3 of these are actual applications, and the other ones are all websites, web apps.
Right.
So now I'm on the plane. I fly in JetBlue. I've
None
got
of
an
them
extra
work.
I have extra room. I have the only seat in the plane that's not taken is right next to me.
Yeah.
I actually have all this space.
Oh, man.
So I'm thinking, wow, I've got 5.5 hours, which, by the way, was an easy 90 minutes longer than I thought this flight was going to be, to work. This
Right.
is great. I never get this opportunity in
Right.
a plane.
Wow.
I have nothing with me locally. I could not do anything.
You got bit by the cloud.
I literally moused around my file system for a few minutes and then said,
I can't do anything.
I got to watch a movie. This is stupid.
Oh.
And this is the problem. So,
Right.
There's...
That's why they have internet on airplanes now.
right, but JetBlue doesn't have this,
Right.
at least not on the plane I was
Right.
on. So,
Don't you feel when you get on an airplane without internet now that it's like
you got to be
something's
kidding
wrong?
me. Something is wrong. And
Yeah.
and by the way, it used to be because what I do for a living requires me to be connected. Now it's just, guess what? The entire U.S. population needs to be connected.
Right.
Let's get with the
I
program.
want to watch Netflix. Come on.
Yeah, this is stupid.
It is amazing. And how quickly that happened.
Yeah.
I
know,
remember when it was a big deal that they had internet on
No,
airplanes, and now you're pissed
by
they
the way,
don't have it.
To defend JetBlue, which is the only airline I love, they do have DirecTV on the plane.
Right.
So even as the plane was taking off,
You're watching
I was
TV.
watching TV. I was watching a Red Sox game live.
I thought
which
I
they
was
got-
too.
they
Red
got
Sox,
destroyed.
Yankees.
It was
Yeah.
terrible. But well, this was a.
Oh, it was the next day. It was
the
Monday.
Blu-ray, the double race, rather.
Tampa.
It was horrible. But anyway, it was fascinating
I was watching the Red Sox, Yankees.
to be able
the
to
day
watch the
before.
Red Sox.
It is. It's amazing. As you're taking off.
As you're taking off.
Yeah.
When no electronics are allowed.
I know. But we can watch
Except
TV.
for my headphones now, because now I can watch TV. Apparently
Yeah.
that's okay now.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you have to be plugged into their system.
Yeah.
And then we were on, I can't remember, was it the new Continental/United?
Mhm.
And they say, I hope you're enjoying this because we're going to turn it off unless you pay $6.
No. Yikes. Brought to you from AT&T.
They said this free preview of the Yankees
You
Red
gotta be
Sox
kidding
game.
me. It's like
You're
they
enjoying
wait
this.
until the guy's like 2 strikes down and
Exactly.
then it goes black.
Then they turn it off. Say that'll be $6.
What? He might have hit a home run. He might have struck out. But if you want to find out, yeah, that's too bad.
So we do, you and that Raphael guy
Mhm.
doing some great work on this Windows 8. You have even more.
I should say before we get to this, Raphael is part of a team of programmers. Involves Chris Walsh and Long Zhang, who did the Chevron WP7 stuff. The homebrew. They broke Windows Phone or hacked into Windows Phone. Chris Walsh, of course, is the guy we talked about last week who figured out how to deliver the updates, and he was here. And we've been having a lot of fun at his expense. Like I went to Mix and all I got was Walshed, that kind of thing. But I should say hi to those guys at least because
Yeah,
it's
he's
been
pretty cool.
Yeah,
Well, that's the interesting thing about Android, and one of the reasons that these updates make a big deal on Windows Phone 7. Every Android phone can be rooted quickly, updated.
Yeah.
There's ROMs for all the latest versions of Android. So, of course, your carrier doesn't provide them, but you can still get them, and you just don't have that capability. Well,
Right.
thanks to Chris, I guess you do.
Yep.
You could put Donut or Dono.
No dough.
No dough, mofo on your phone.
I hope I don't. This isn't upsetting anybody, but I'll give you an unsubstantiated rumor that I heard secondhand. if
Love
you
it.
will,
Let's
from
hear
a
it.
Microsoft employee, which was that Microsoft originally intended to provide all of the Mix attendees with a copy of NoDo, right, the software update for Windows Phone, because a lot of people aren't getting it from their carriers.
Right.
Of course, the tool they were going to use is the one that Chris Walsh based his tool on. But when Chris Walsh's tool came out and they examined it, they realized that doing it in this fashion actually could harm the phone.
Oh.
At least that's the story. So they asked Chris.
They can't.
They asked Chris to shut it down.
Right.
Now, instead of thanking Chris for alerting them to this problem, because they would have potentially bricked thousands of phones here at Mix themselves, they make him look like a jerk and made him apologize. And
wow.
which is a little. It makes this story even more negative in a way.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
So had they done that,
they would have done what Chris Walsh did. Well, what I should say, what
But he
Chris
didn't
Walsh
brick any
allegedly
phones, did
did.
he?
Well, that's the story. I mean, I don't.
that's the thing. I don't.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
I don't think so. Windows 8 features now revealed include Smart Screen.
Yeah. So over the past, not this
been
week,
happy
but
with your dumb screen for so long.
Raphael had written a number of posts about Windows 8. Eventually, it was weird because we went into this knowing that Microsoft would probably just shut us down, right? That they would say,
Right. You
time
can't
to
do
stop.
that. Yep.
About a week into it, we really hadn't heard anything from them yet.
Cool.
And, well, that made me a little nervous.
That's a license to steal.
Well, we talked about it. We said maybe we should wrap this thing up, and so we did. But of course, other people are posting some interesting stuff, and we've actually
talk about a chilling effect.
Yeah,
you quit even before they said anything.
This is
it's I understand. You got to keep a good relationship with them.
We have a book to write here.
You can only go so far.
Speaking of which, you did that SquareSpace ad. I should have mentioned for the Windows 8 Secrets book, we're going to have a website that we're using SquareSpace for that. And we're using SharePoint and Office 365 in the back end and everything. But anyway, yeah, the public website's actually going to be on
You're going to
SquareSpace.
spoil yourself and say,
Yeah, I know. Going from what I'm using to
modern content
to
management
WordPress
system.
on my phone blog and then to SquareSpace on the Windows one will be awful. But
welcome to the 21st century, Paul.
Anyway, there are other people, of course, releasing information about Windows 8, and there are also some people coming down the pike who have actually broken into Windows 8 leaked builds in ways that are similar to what Raphael did.
Oh.
And so it's possible we might even see some more stuff that goes deeper, and hopefully nothing that we had already had in the can. But
well, you've done your job.
I think so. So this week we're actually we'll probably do another one today or tomorrow because there's some additional stuff, but found out about some of the new features in Windows. So coming in Windows. So Smart Screen is a feature that's been in Internet Explorer since version 8. And it's basically around preventing drive-by attacks and malware downloads and things like that, which is great if you use IE. But if you use Chrome or Firefox, you don't get that protection.
What happens if you go to a site that's got a malware on it?
Well, it depends on how it's engineered and what browsers it's designed to.
But if you're an IE9,
it will actually, the screen goes red. You get a red bar at the top. It will prevent you from going.
That's great.
Yeah, you could get through it if you wanted to, but it's very obvious.
It warns you.
It's very obvious.
Yeah.
So what they're doing in Windows 8 is they're moving that capability right to the shell.
Good.
So it won't matter where the file comes from.
Good.
You can plug in a USB key off of a DVD, whatever it is. Different browser.
Warning.
Yeah, so that's smart.
I think that is smart.
We've known for some time that Windows 8 will include an app store of some kind.
We saw some screenshots.
Maybe. I'm actually not positive about this one because I actually think they're going to call this thing Windows Marketplace, not Windows App Store, which
I don't think so because Apple is already a little prickly about that.
I thought that was a little weird. So, and by the way, the screenshots look a little too much like the layout of the Apple Mac Store. So we'll see.
It's
But
bogus.
Absolutely, there's a store coming. So
we know that. Microsoft's even said that.
Right.
Yeah.
History Vault was one that involves kind of a misconception. A lot of people look at this and say, "Oh, this is like Time Machine on the Mac," to which I would say, actually, Time Machine on the Mac is like a feature Windows has had for years. So they just put a pretty face on top of it. So back in Windows
version restores.
It's three different things, right? So one is versioning, right? So previous versions of files.
Right.
Microsoft added it to Server back in 2003 when sort of the version alongside Windows XP. They added it to Windows Vista, and it continues in Windows 7. The problem is it's almost impossible to find. I mean,
I know. People don't know it exists.
That's the problem with it, right?
Yeah.
So the previous versions exist, and it works well for whatever that's worth, but it's hard to find.
So this will be more exposed.
Yeah, so that's one of them. One of the other ones is your normal file backup, right? Just backup, what we think of as backup. You've got documents and photos and music, whatever it is, and you want to back it up to someplace. And then the third one is the system image, the ability to back up the entire state of your computer. Now,
that's nice.
All of these features are in Windows 7, but in Windows 8, they're all being consolidated into one nice UI called History Vault.
Yeah, somebody called the radio show a couple of weeks ago and said, I need a Ghost, an imaging system for Windows 7. I was telling them he's use OS and stuff. And the chat room said, it's built into Windows.
Yeah,
I said, what?
Yeah, I know. Nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
It's
our chat room knows. They're smart. But
it's these features
it's not well exposed.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
It's kind of a technical thing in a way, but it works really well. And it's just people just don't know it's there.
Yep.
One of the things I'm most excited about is, and we're going to see how far they go with this. I've talked about the need to separate the user data from the apps from the OS so that you could blow away the OS and not worry about the other stuff.
Now, I do it by hand by having a data partition.
You can physically separate them, and there are manual ways to do that today. But in Windows 8, apparently, based on the stuff we've seen, is the ability to reinstall Windows where it blows away Windows but doesn't touch the applications, doesn't touch the settings,
Doesn't
doesn't
touch
touch
the apps.
the data. Yes, even the apps, and that's huge. And what that suggests is even if you only had the single partition, like a C partition, this should still work. And that's really interesting. So we'll see. In other words, when I talk about physically, if you it's not really physically, but we'll call it physically separating data, settings, apps, and OS, you're talking about a bit of complexity, right? I mean, you have different partitions, essentially. Microsoft's approach, if I'm understanding it correctly, is to not worry about all that stuff.
Right.
They'll be physically commingled, but we can still blow away the OS. And that's neat because in addition to this, Windows 8 installs really fast, 8-9 minutes, somewhere in there. So,
Even faster than 7.
yeah, and it's amazing. So what's cool about that is today, if you get your system to a state where you're like, wow, I really need to blow this thing away, it's a daunting task because again, you're not even sure. You say, okay, well, I got to get my data out. If there was some way to back up my settings, and there is actually, but few people know about it, I need to do that. And then I have to find all my Windows applications and reinstall them, whether from the web or from disk or whatever it is. Any one of those things is the reason why people don't do that, because they'll hit that point where they say, well, I don't have the Office installation disk, now I can't do this.
Yeah.
So this not only removes that barrier, but it happens like this. I mean, imagine if you could say, well, my system's running a little slow, I'm just going to reinstall Windows. You hit a button.
But will it be good enough to do that, or get rid of malware or whatever? I mean, we will wipe out everything except your apps and
that I don't know.
maybe
as
not
far as
malware, but it will speed things up.
Yes.
It will clean it up.
This looks like it's exactly what
That's cool.
we've been asking for. Yeah, so
That's cool.
that looks really nice. The rest of this stuff is just little technical
Crap.
things, but yeah, not crap. Well, for example, well, all right, I'll give you one. So you're
terrible.
using a computer here that has solid state storage and no optical disk.
That's right.
This is
It's the
this
MacBook
is
Air.
the new norm,
Yep.
right? Now there are Windows PCs like this as well.
Sure.
You can run Windows in here, whatever it is.
In fact, I'm really tempted to buy one of those Lenovo X220s with the solid state drive. Boy, that'd be sweet.
And that's great. But if you have to install Office, how do you do that?
Right.
How do you do that? So
You download it.
Right. So in Windows today, you could download it, and you download an ISO, and then you could burn it to disk, or you could extract the ISO, which is a time-consuming process that requires you to find a third-party tool.
It's not obvious.
Or you could mount the ISO using a third-party tool, most of which are lousy or impact
They're
performance.
kind of weird.
So now what they've done in Windows 8 is they've made ISO files like zip files. They just work
Oh,
natively.
hallelujah! That is a nice feature.
You mount it; it shows up as a disk. You run the setup program. You get rid of it by ejecting it, just like you do. Yeah, so really nice.
Very
so
sweet.
those are the Windows 8 features of the week, I guess.
I count only 3 of those are already on the Mac, so that's not too bad.
Well, actually, I'll add a fourth.
I couldn't resist.
OEM BIOS activation is a way that Microsoft can tie the activation of Windows to the hardware, and I'm guessing that's something that's not on the Mac.
No, it is not.
So that's 4. You lose, Laporte.
We do not have OEM BIOS activation. Not yet.
Who wouldn't?
Anyway.
And who wouldn't?
And who
want
wouldn't
that?
want that? What a feature! Hey, let's take a break. Come back with more. We're talking with Paul Thurrott. Windows Weekly is on the air. We're here at the National Association of Broadcasters show, the NAB Show, as we have been all week, and we have more coverage from NAB tomorrow as well. So make sure you tune in 9 a.m. Pacific Time, 12 noon tomorrow for continued coverage of the NAB Show. We thank NAB for bringing us here. And we also thank the folks at LiveView for making our stream possible. We'll use that 3G backpack to stream not only here, but tonight at the Bob Heil Party and many other places. And, of course, our friends at NewTek for the TriCaster HD850, those sweet switcher. It's sweet. This show brought to you by Hover.com. Domain name registration made simple. I saw the other day that 20,000 people left the other guy after that video he posted. The elephant video? 20,000 customers out the door. I don't.
There are better reasons to leave that company.
Oh, there are plenty.
And I can seriously, from having spent a lot of time trying to configure SharePoint through this company.
Yeah.
Let's just say their interfaces are somewhat Byzantine.
That's why we love Hover. Hover makes it simple. You couldn't get easier. Now, somebody sent me an email and said, well, I found cheaper registration somewhere else. I'm not saying it's the cheapest by any means. Most of the time, if it costs less, it's because you're also buying hosting or some other service. In fact, that's one of the things many of these other services do is they upsell you like crazy. So you try to do a simple thing like register, Thurrott.com, and you end up clicking 100 buttons before you get through the domain registration.
Please don't try doing that, by the way.
Yeah. Don't. It's not available. Now, Hover makes it easy. A simple one-click button. What they sell is domain registration service. You can have emails, But I mean, they're not upselling you. Whois privacy is built in; it's part of the price. And I love this for the TWiT audience. They've now added free transfer concierge service. So if you have a number of sites and you'd like to transfer them to hover.com, usually they'll do that for $25. They're going to waive that fee if you go to windows.hover.com. windows.hover.com. Transfers cost $10 per domain name, but you get an extra year. So that's $10 for an additional year plus the transfer, and they're going to waive the concierge fee. You could still do it free if you're going to do it by hand, but trust me, have them do it. I learned my lesson. It's so much easier as you're transferring your domain over. And so we're not done yet. We also want to encourage you to get 10% off your domain registration costs by going to windows.hover.com and using the offer code Windows when you check out. So there's a lot of good reasons to use Hover, including their no-hold policy for calls during regular business hours. They're just really nice guys, really a good company, make it very simple. They don't try to trick you into anything. It's what you see is what you get. It's clean, it's simple, it's the way to do it. Windows.hover.com. We thank them for their support of Windows Weekly. So a couple of news items. I thought I'd love to know what you thought. Google got ITA. I'm surprised. I thought that the regulatory process would not go so smoothly. This is the travel services company.
Back-end services.
Yeah, it's going to give Google kind of the thing that Bing already has, where you enter a search for a flight.
Well, except that Bing gets that from ITA.
Yeah, which is why this was
obviously,
an issue.
Well, the front end came from the company they purchased, whose name I'm now forgetting.
But ITA does this for everybody.
ITA does the back end.
Yeah, for everybody. Yeah. And the idea being Google searches now will be smart about travel information, flight information.
Faircast was the name of that.
Faircast. Okay.
I think.
Did they get any? Were there any restrictions?
Yeah, so it's really funny. I also expected the U.S. government basically to say no.
That's what I thought.
Which actually is what they did, for whatever that's worth. So the government actually said, to your proposal, we say no. However, here's a new proposal. We'll call it a settlement. And here are some restrictions. And if you agree to this, you can have ITA. So Google immediately agreed. And now both sides can claim that they won because Microsoft and the companies that were allied against Google can say, look, you got the concession. We got the concessions we were asking for, and Google got ITA, which is what they were looking for. So
good.
The deal's going to go
Worked
through.
out well.
Yeah, it seems like it's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll see. So I think the trick's going to be down the road when Microsoft will inevitably complain that Google has some functionality on their site that is not exposed through some API yet, and they will complain about that, and we'll go to court. And I think that's how this is going to roll.
So it's not over.
Forward. I don't think so
by any means.
Well, they have ITA, so that's over. I mean, there's no doubt about it. But they've set it up so that there is a mitigation process that has to occur, and Google has to adhere to certain rules and so forth.
I think that's appropriate.
Yeah,
I think that's appropriate.
Yeah.
Speaking of lawsuits, the Winklevi. I love this story. Now, the Winklevoss twins, if you saw the social network, those are the Harvard rowing twins who came to Mark Zuckerberg and said, hey, we want to create a site called Harvard Connection. Will you write the software? He said yes, but never did write anything, kept putting them off.
And then in that time wrote Facebook, which was exactly what those guys were trying to do.
Much to their chagrin.
Yeah.
They sued, and what we didn't know is what they got. And now I guess that's come out in this lawsuit. They got $20 million plus a stake that is in total worth $160 million.
Now, I think that's what it's worth now. I think originally it was worth 65, but because
Facebook's
value
doing
has gone up.
Right.
Yeah, they're doing pretty good again.
Yeah.
It's worth $165 million.
But they said, no, we want more. We want billions.
Well,
and the judge said, no, get out
So,
of
assuming
here.
their story is true, and I'm leaning toward thinking it might be.
I totally believe, especially with this new lawsuit.
I think so.
Yeah. That's where we're going to see some fire.
They've been screwed twice, right? So they came up with the
idea. Come on, they got $160 million.
Right. But Facebook is worth whatever $1 billion, and they came up with the idea and were screwed out of it. I mean, I see what you're saying, but they have a point. I guess according to the judge, he called it settler's remorse, and said, sorry, you can't come back.
The issue is it's easy to have an idea. Facebook is not Facebook because of the idea. Facebook is Facebook because of the implementation.
So this was not accurately portrayed in the movie, by the way. But one of the things that is true about the story is that much of the coding of the site was already done before Mark Zuckerberg showed up.
Did he use their code?
Yes, that's part of the charge.
Oh,
so not only did he not write anything for them, he actually took code.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so that's part of it.
That's something else.
Yeah, so they were. It's not just code,
that's a little legitimate,
actual code and then actual functionality, right? So, yeah, this is part of the complaint. Anyway, it doesn't matter because whatever he did doesn't matter because they settled.
Right.
So they basically agreed.
That's what the judge said. You can't say,
right.
Let's start over.
Now, their second complaint, the thing that led to this appeal, is actually kind of interesting because they said that Facebook, in their dealings with them during the settlement, lied to them about the value of the company. Thus, their settlement was worth less than what it should have been.
Right.
That's an interesting argument, but unfortunately, I guess according to the law, according to the court,
you're done.
Yeah.
Done is done. Now they could go to the Supreme Court. I don't know.
I think at this point they need to just
But
walk
you've
away.
convinced me. The issue of having stolen code is very different. If he actually reused their code, that's very different.
The movie is fantastic, and I think is a very accurate portrayal of the events in that sense. But it's a movie, so the dialogue is all invented by and large.
Right.
And then there are streamlining that occurs when you're trying to tell a story as a movie. So
now the Celia story is very interesting. Paul Celia is a convicted felon. For fraud.
Okay.
He sued last year.
This is the other.
In upstate New York, saying, "No, I should get half of Facebook because I funded it." And everybody laughed and said, "The guy's got a bad history. This can't possibly be true."
Dun dun dun.
He now is with a much larger white shoe law firm.
Right.
And apparently they have smoking guns. They have emails. They have a cashed check.
Sure.
It looks like this guy hired Zuckerberg when he was 17 or 18 to write something called Street Facts, which he did and paid him $1,000 for, and then gave him another $1,000 to start the Facebook. And the emails that have been produced between him and Zuckerberg are...
Zuckerberg's downfall is got to be his, ego or hubris or whatever, but this was obviously the problem in the previous lawsuit, was all of the email that was retained, which made him look very bad.
Well, what's interesting, it looks like he did something similar. Now, again, I don't know what the merit of this, but something similar to this Celia guy. In other words, saying, I'll take your money, I'll write this site, and then he tried to buy him off saying, oh, I'm not going to, he said, it's not going anywhere, Facebook's a flop. Here's your money back. I'm sorry.
Right.
There may be more here than we thought. And there's also this, I think there's this a little bit, now you're starting to a little bit wonder about Mark Zuckerberg. And
I have always wondered about Mark Zuckerberg. I mean, there are guys who founded companies like Paul Allen and Bill Gates, or Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, who, there are stories about them, but they're well known, and there's no doubt about their inspiration and dedication and all that stuff. Mark Zuckerberg, he's never struck me as one of those guys ever.
I thought he was really smart, but now I'm wondering.
I don't know. I don't
Facebook, of course, denies it, and it'll go to trial, and we'll find out. And I'm sure they'll settle. He wants half the company. He wants $50 or $60 billion.
Sure.
I'm sure they'll settle out of court. We may never know what really went on here, but
it's going to cost them a lot of money. It sounds like.
I'm surprised. I thought this was a laugher.
Sure.
I mean,
you have to think this is probably going to be it, right? Could there be other origin stories that we haven't heard?
Well, that's what I'm wondering.
I mean,
don't you wonder now?
We're talking about a 6-month period, 6 years
Holy
ago. Holy
cow!
Yeah, that's crazy.
Well, we'll be talking about that on TWiT, I'm sure, this Sunday. Paul Thurrott is editor-in-chief of the Windows SuperSite for Windows, winsupersite.com.
I am.
News editor of Windows IT Pro. He's analyst for Penton Media. He's out here for Mix. How much longer are you going to be out here?
I'm leaving tonight. My bag's at the press room.
His bags are packed. He's ready to go.
Yeah. In and out.
In and out. Well, it's really great to see you,
You
Paul.
too, thank you.
We don't get to work together in person very often, so it's always
Well, I'll
fun
see
to
you
do
again
that.
in the summer. We're going to come out in August. So.
Good. You'll see that you'll be in the new studio. That'll be a lot of fun. You can, of course, watch us do this show normally every Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern at live.twit.tv, and subscribe for download later at twit.tv/www for Windows Weekly. Coming up this week in Google, we're going to go back to the studio. We will be back here in Vegas later this evening, 6 p.m. For the Bob Heil party. We'll put all of the NAB show stuff on
Bob Heil as in
the
Heil?
microphone you're talking into. Yeah, they don't do a booth. They just have a hell of a party.
A heil of a party?
A heil of a party. We're going to be there live starting, I think, at 6 tonight.
Nice.
And then more coverage tomorrow starting at 9 a.m. from our Sky booth here in beautiful Las Vegas Convention Center.
Palatial South Hall.
Yes. It is.
Yeah.
Well, it's actually more like the box the pallets came in than the pallets itself. Paul,
true.
thanks for being here. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
See you next week on Windows Weekly.